Hey everybody, Pastor Hans here, and thank you for tuning in to this 28-day Acts challenge. And I just want to take this opportunity to remind you why it is that we chose the book of Acts. We chose the book of Acts and invited you to walk through that book, specifically because the Acts tells the story of the beginning of the church. If we want to see a picture of the church God wanted for all of us, we look at the book of Acts. So way to go. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We are in day 13, chapter 13 of the book of Acts. If you haven't read it yet, I want to invite you to pause the video, read the 13th chapter, and then start it up again. Just a little bit of a backstory, just to recall, if you've been journeying with us. In chapter 9 of the book of Acts, we get the story of how Paul was commissioned to go out and to bring Jesus to the Gentile people. What are the Gentile people? Well, those are the people that were outsiders to the life of the synagogue. They were the people who were considered the untouchables, the people no one on the inside of the church ever in that ancient world would have thought of going in contact with, better yet, inviting them into a life with Jesus. Paul was commissioned to head on out and to reach those people for Jesus. It would have been seen as an abomination. It was this wild, drastic expansion of the bounds of God's love. So in chapter 13, we get a sort of a picture of how far-flung Paul went, how wide God's net was cast through Paul. Because Paul, it says in all these stories in chapter 13, he went to these far-off places. He went to Seleucia, he went to Cyprus, he went to Salamis, he went to Paphos. Those are these crazy names I'm sure you stumbled through as you read it. These were places it would have taken Paul huge periods of time to travel to. He would have had to take a ship to these faraway places. A historian actually suggested that Paul logged some 10,000 miles on his journey. One of the places he stopped was Paphos. And if you read chapter 13, you heard that Paul encountered what some translations call a sorcerer, others call a magician, others call an astrologer. Why does he encounter this sort of a character? Well, the author put that in there to paint us a picture of how outside the box, how big and wide and great the net was cast through Paul. Again, Paul was breaking boundaries, reaching people that faith-filled people would have never touched before. He also goes to a place, Pisidian of Antioch. He would have traveled a third of the way through Asia Minor. This was not a short journey. Again, showing the lengths, the depth, the breadth of God's kingdom growing. It's interesting. In chapter 13, verse 44, we hear these words. On the next Sabbath, almost the whole city, the entire community where Paul was visiting, they gathered to hear the word of the Lord. Now think about that. Almost the whole city. Can you imagine what it would be like if on Sunday morning we opened the doors and almost the entire city gathered with us? A little later on in verse 49 of chapter 13, it says, the word of the Lord spread through the whole region. It goes on to say, but the Jews incited God-fearing women of high standing and the leading men of the city. They stirred up persecution against Paul and Barnabas and expelled them from the region. So they shook the dust from their feet in protest against them, and they went to Iconium. And the disciples were filled with joy and with the Holy Spirit. It said the word of the Lord spread through the whole region. You see, this whole chapter 13, is meant to paint a picture of the sort of work that God invited Paul into, but invites us to. And so my questions for you today, based on chapter 13, go like this. If we were to get serious about the mission of the church, leading all people to a lifelong faith, whoever they are, whatever their background, whether they're churched or unchurched, where would it take us? If we were to get really serious like Paul did, how far would we go? Where in our community would we take the gospel of Jesus? Would we take the love of God? Where would we take it? And secondly, my question is this: what message are all the people in our community longing for, in your community longing for? So much so that the whole city would gather to hear you speak about it. What are people longing for? First question, if we were to get serious about the mission of the church, leading people to a lifelong faith, where would it take us? And secondly, what message are all the people longing for in our world today? Folks, thanks for tuning in so much. If you've appreciated this 28-day Acts challenge, we'd love for you to share it with a friend. You can do that through social media. Give us a thumbs up, hit the bell so you get notifications, stay connected, and tell a friend. Thanks so much, gang. Have a good one.